365 in Vegas, day 218. I am at Springs Preserve for their Dinosaurs Unearthed exhibit. It is a fascinating exhibit. I have to get moving or else this T-Rex, as you see behind me, is going to have me for a dinner. Day 218.
Hi, my name is Aaron McCullough. I'm the curator here at the Springs Preserve. I'd like to welcome you to our Dinosaurs Unearthed exhibit. Follow me, let's take a tour. All right, so here we are on the indoor version of the Dinosaurs Unearthed exhibit. Behind me, we kind of have what we're calling the predator trap. So the thinking behind this scene, and this was based on some fossils that were found, is that small, relative to the Stegosaurus, came into this muddy bog, got trapped, got stuck. Some young Allosauruses, some juveniles came after him. They also got stuck in the mud. Their cries for help or displeasure attracted some adult Allosaurs who then started feasting on the juvenile Allosaurs. So a lot of dinosaurs are they're cannibals. And that's actually very, very common in the animal world. A lot of people have had pets, maybe fish, lizards, understand how that happens. So that's kind of what's going on in this particular scene right here. Just over to my right as well, we have this great scale. You step on it and it tells you how much you weigh in relationship to a dinosaur. So over here, however, we're talking about T-Rexes. And we're talking about two things. One, there's the very exciting T-Rex coming out of the volcano. That's really fun. But what we're really focusing on is this. This is a juvenile T-Rex. And this gets to the idea of the fact that there are connections between dinosaurs and birds, okay? And so you may notice that this juvenile T-Rex has kind of a downy undercoating. It's very similar to what a penguin has when a penguin molts. Every year a penguin will drop its feathers and grow in a new set. So it's very similar to that. And so the thinking behind this was, as this T-Rex aged, as he got older, he probably was better able to thermoregulate his body temperature and then drop the feathers off. But maybe not. Maybe he actually kept some more around his head as a crown, possibly as a way to potentially attract a mate. No one really knows. But that's the current thinking. And that gets the idea again that as we find more dinosaurs, we're rewriting the history. Now, most of the dinosaurs in this exhibit, with a few exceptions, were they're based on finds in China, the Western US, Canada, and Mongolia as well. Here we are again in the Dinosaurs Unearthed exhibit. I want to point out a couple artifacts. Farthest away from me in the case, we have some coprolite, which is just basically a fancy way of saying fossilized dinosaur poop. We are actually able to learn a lot from dinosaurs based on the waste they left behind. So much like an archaeologist will base his or her studies on the trash that humans have left behind, paleontologists can learn a lot from dinosaur waste in terms of what they were eating and things like that. Also, closest to me, we have an oviraptor egg. It's an egg from a dinosaur, and these again are often found in the fossil record. With a lot of dinosaurs, in fact, in this particular case, it was with a raptor. They thought it was a thief. Oviraptor means like egg thief. It turns out actually that they think, in fact, that was wrong, that the raptor was actually sitting on a nest. It was her eggs, the clutch that she was protecting. So more along that, let me show you a raptor right over here. It's a model of a raptor. We call this one a microraptor, which basically I call it egg thief, small thief in this particular case. So oviraptor egg thief, microraptor small thief. This one would be the early Cretaceous period, about 125 million years ago, based on a scientific find in China. I will say the animatronic dinosaur that's moving is much larger than the actual dinosaur was. It only got to about 40 centimeters in length, about 16 inches, and only weighed about just over 2 pounds. So again, not every dinosaur is this giant hulking behemoth. This particular one, about this big. But still, if it decided to bite you, probably would not be a good experience. Okay, so here I'm standing in front of a velociraptor and the protoceratops. So the velociraptor here Looks a little bit smaller, not much smaller than you see in the Jurassic Park movies, but even this is made larger than it really was. So in this particular case, in real life, the animal would get to be about, 6 feet long max. It would get to be about a half a foot, maybe a foot and a half high, and then maybe only about 33 pounds. Okay? Similarly, the Protoceratops, which looks very similar to a Triceratops with its crest here, in real life would only get to be 5 to 8 feet long and maybe about 900 pounds. Large, but not as large as I think they're made to believe here. And these are actually made to be shown that these are dinosaurs in the desert. Okay? And we're not always dinosaurs in tropical areas that we're necessarily thinking of. But deserts back then might have been a little bit more wet. Who knows? I don't know. Over here, however, we've got a Triceratops, juvenile Triceratops. You'll notice that the crest isn't quite as fanned out, and the crest is this portion right here as the adult version that we saw outside, and the horns are much smaller. Okay? So he's going through essentially dinosaur puberty. So over here we have an example of some actual fossilized horns of an adult Triceratops. Again, they're probably used as a way of defense from a predator, and then maybe as a way to attract a mate. These two dinosaurs behind me, the Tyrannosaurus Rex and the Triceratops, were really too large to fit inside the exhibit hall indoors, so we had no other option but to put them outside. So here we are at our Gardens Amphitheater, and unloading the dinosaurs was quite involved. We had to rent a crane, a large crane, that came over the area to my right. So a container was dropped off, part of the dinosaurs were pulled out. So using the T-Rex as an example, the T-Rex was basically without its legs, so up to about its hip joints. And that kind of came in as one unit. So that was taken out of the truck, placed on the ground, and then the legs were positioned, the body was lifted up, they were lifted on top of the legs, and then the joints were connected, and scenic painters then sewed, stitched the skin together so it met at the two spots, and then repainted it so you don't necessarily see that. A similar thing happened with the Triceratops, although not as extensive, and both of them had to be craned over the retaining wall to my right, down into the area over here. Now, obviously the T-Rex, Tyrannosaurus Rex, is often thought of as the big apex predator in the dinosaur world, and depending on which paleontologist, and a paleontologist is someone who studies dinosaurs that you talk to, they may say no, it was not really an active predator. When we think of a lion like a predator, it was really more of a scavenger. It's going to go for things that are dead. And other people will say, no, it really wasn't the biggest predator. You got carnivores, you got other animals. Regardless, it was a large predator. There's no doubt about it. And the idea that it might have been a scavenger has to do, and it's very well thought theory, really well, it's a theory for which a lot of people seem to agree with, is that if you take a look at the T-Rex's head, it's very, very large, and it has a very large olfactory senses, smell. Animals with really keen senses of smell tend to be scavengers, because animals that are dead give off a smell. And these animals that are scavengers use that smell to help hone in on prey. So maybe it was a scavenger. And if you also, famously the T-Rex arms, the front forelimbs, there's not so much you can do with those. So the thinking was it actually used its big head and actually bent down. And that's why you see the T-Rex in that kind of front forward position, as opposed to 40 years ago when I was much younger, the T-Rex was always upright. And so again, that has to do with the fact that it's kind of pitched more forward, thinking that it might have been an active, scavenger. The Triceratops, on the other hand, would obviously have been an herbivore. And they think that the horns and the kind of mane around the side of there, around its head, was used for protection. They certainly were herbivores. Herbivores tend to have eyes that are such that they get really good vision on either side. That way they can kind of scan the savanna, for lack of a better term, for large predators like a T-Rex or something else that might cause it harm. So we kind of have these two set up as kind of a little standoff. They do roar, they do make noise when we walk in front of them, so I'll go ahead and trigger that.